And we're live. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Tim Backers, joined this evening by Raptors assistant coach, Adrian Griffin. Adrian, thanks so much for joining me this evening. Stuck in your apartment, a bit like all of us, I think.
Yeah, but when you understand it's the right thing to do, it's the right cause. So we all got to do our part. Me and the wife have been in the trenches here, just locked ourselves in, and it's been good.
If you would, if we backtrack, tell us a little bit about yourself. You started as a player, transitioned into coaching, and you've actually moved around quite a lot, both as a player and a coach.
Yeah, I was a bit of a journeyman coming into the league. I went undrafted, played in the minor leagues for 3 years, just kind of worked my way through, and I ended up playing 9 years. Boston, Chicago, Houston, Dallas, Seattle. You you name it. I probably either tried out for the team or I was on that team. But it taught me a lot. You learn a lot of different experiences as far as coaching and playing and coaching styles and whatnot. And then I was able to get on in Milwaukee with Scott Skiles for my first 2 years of coaching. Went on to Chicago with Tom Thibodeau for 5 years, 1 year in Orlando, back with Scott Skiles. Then 2 years with Billy Donovan in OKC. Then last 2 years here with the Toronto Raptors. I should say world champion Toronto Raptors.
There you go. Hey, why not? You earned it. One of the questions I had, and we've done an interview before, and I'm going to post that on our YouTube channel in a day or two. But one of the questions that I really wanted to talk about was, as a player, what was it like going from place to place? Because sometimes it's not your decision, right? And so how do you deal with that as a player, knowing that you could just be, hey, by the way, you were playing for the Bulls, now you're playing for the Magic, off you go to Florida?
It's very difficult at times. 1 year I was traded in the middle of the season, so I had to uproot. And my kids were in New York and they were in school, and I got traded from Chicago to Seattle. So it was, you just can't hop on a 30-minute flight.
Right.
It was almost 5-6 hour flight from Seattle to New York, so it was very difficult to get home. But on the other hand, you have to just accept that this is part of what comes along with being a player in the NBA. And I think the most important thing is keep it in perspective. Even on my worst day or our worst days in the NBA as a player, it's still a great job.
Yeah.
You just gotta say, hey, this is something I just gotta adjust to and make the best out of it.
What about from a family perspective? I know from a coach's perspective, it's difficult on families because you're moving from place to place and taking children out of their normal environments, and the same thing, by the way kids were moving. Have you found any kind of, not easy way, but way to make that transition easier?
I think the organizations they're doing a phenomenal job just helping players get just situated. So different from when I played. Now we have different personnel on the staff that really does a phenomenal job of, getting these families situated, finding the best schools, finding the best doctors, just being a helping hand. And I think that's huge for players, especially players that get traded in the middle of the season. Last season we traded for Gasol, and his family stayed in Memphis. So we wanted to make his experience, as easy as possible for his family to come and visit. And on days off, we wanted to make sure that if he needed to get back to Memphis or his family came up, we gave him all the resources that possible that he needed. So, there's no way around it.
You got to make it work.
Yeah, that we're in. You get traded. This league is about travel. it's about games. It's one after the other, and you just have to accept it and make the best of it.
Now you went from being a player into being a coach.
Mm-hmm.
How did that work? What made it easier for you to transition? Because as you and I have talked before, not every player can make that transition into coaching. So how did you make it successful?
Well, just a little background on how I got into coaching. I was coaching with the Chicago Bulls, and I still had a year or two left on my contract. But like most veterans, you feel like you can play, man. You want to get out there.
Right.
They were playing the young rookies, which I understood, and I learned from the past that you just got to keep a good attitude because you never know who's watching. So one day after practice, the head coach at the time was Scott Skiles. He came up to me and said, "Hey, I appreciate how you working with the young guys and keeping a good attitude out of this. And whenever you do retire, I have a job for you." So long story short, I got traded to Seattle, then traded to Seattle, moved to OKC.
Right.
When I was at OKC trying to find an apartment, the general manager called me again and said I got traded.
No way.
Yeah. And Scott Skiles got let go in Chicago, and he took the Milwaukee Bucks job. So I went all the way into training camp, and I thought I was on the team, and the deadline was at 2:59. I'm sorry, at 3 o'clock. He called me at 2:59 and told me that I didn't make the roster. How about I join the staff? And so I literally went from playing and into coaching in the coaches' locker room. It was different. 1 minute I'm in the players' locker room with the fellas, the next minute I'm with the coaches, and I was a new guy. But one thing that I really made a point about when I started coaching is I wanted the players to know that I was serious about my new appointment as a coach. I didn't play around, with them before practice and after practice. I tried to maintain a level of seriousness. Then after practice, I would shoot the breeze with them after I worked them out or not. But I wanted them to know that, like, this is important to me. I want you guys got to see me a little bit differently. And it worked out. I didn't have any issues. It was great. The coaching staff was phenomenal. And being under Scott Skiles especially those first 2 years were pivotal for me to, getting into coaching.
Well, I should say, as we're going along, if any of you watching have questions, be sure to post them in your chat box, and we'll try to get them to Adrian as we go along. So please do that. Let's have a conversation rather than me having to ask all these questions. You talked a little bit about the transition into coaching. What would you say as an early career coach? I mean, you're not that now, but as an early career coach, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced?
Well, you had to learn a new language, a new system. It was totally different. You hear a lot of debate about players going directly into coaching, and it's the same thing. It's not. Coaching is a lot more hours than I thought. It's a lot more attention to detail. It made me appreciate the coaches I had in the past, even to a greater extent, because I realized that, man, these guys were really, really working hard for us. And I think the number one thing is your communication skills. You have to be able to relate and build those relationships. And I think as a player, a former player, that's helped me. It helps you build a relationship, but then you have to be able to be a good teacher. This is one of the things Tom Thibodeau would always stress, that he wanted his coaches to be good teachers, not just X and O's, but really how do you develop the relationship? How do you develop the players on and off the floor? And it had a lot more to do with it than I ever imagined. And even to this day, I'm still learning. I'm still trying to fine tune my skills as a coach.
How do you learn as a coach? What do you do that helps you kind of continually get better?
Well, fortunately, in today's age, there's so many resources. One, I think you have to take it upon yourself take the initiative. There's tons of books to read. There's tons of videos you get online, have mentors, and thank God we have now FSU coach, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Shameless plug. I appreciate it.
Coach, that's important, and it's huge for the coaching industry. To have these resources that coaches can go to. I was literally starting from scratch. I had great mentors, and they led by example, but it took me years to develop those intricate skills that you need to really thrive. I was doing well, I was getting by, but if you really want to take your coaching to another level, you got to dig a lot deeper. You really got to take it as it is a profession, and you got to educate yourself the best that you can. It's ironic because the more that you develop yourself, the better you become as a coach, and the better the players become. The better you are as a coach, the better the players become, and it's amazing.
If I go back, you mentioned the fact that you won an NBA championship last season, and I remember watching the whole time. But I can't imagine being there on the bench and being in that environment and seeing it all unfold. Can you talk a little bit about? I mean, that's why we do it, right? That's why we coach, to have those opportunities. What was it like for you as a coach and a player who had kind of never held that trophy, and then to do it as a coach? What was it like?
For me, it was
a deep breath.
For me, it was a sense of gratitude, and the gratitude was out of all the hardships and the lessons that I've learned over the last 20 years, because you don't know how, at that time, you don't really understand how it's preparing you for the ultimate, which is to win a championship. All those lessons that I've learned, and all of those long hours. And when you get into the playoffs and you get deeper in the playoffs, now is can you bring your best? And your best is a compilation of all the experiences that you've had, in your life. When I was in player development, when I was, behind the bench, when I was on the bench, when I was, in Chicago, when I was in. You learn all these lessons, and it was amazing because I was able to, and I'm speaking for our entire staff, we were able to pull our resources together, all our experiences together, and it's almost like here's a complete package, and it was something that we were really proud of because, it's not easy to win a championship, man. It's every round. We had Orlando; they were tough. They challenged us. The Philly series, if you look at their starting five against anybody, it's hard to argue that they had a really elite top five starters there. Obviously Milwaukee was the number one team in the NBA last year, and then Golden State. You really realized why Golden State are, they're champions, just from being on the floor and seeing how they respond to adversity. It was amazing.
You come from winning a championship, and kind of as soon as the season is over, your whole team changes its structure. You lose your kind of superstar player in Leonard. How do you then kind of reboot and rebuild? Because it would be easy for a team to just kind of like, well, we made it, everyone left, and now we're going to go back down and we're going to have to start all over again. But you haven't done that. And I know the season is over faster than maybe we want. Well, I know we want, but you guys performed at an extremely high level again this season without your star player. What do you do to make sure that happens?
Well, I think when you mention systems, I think one of the first organizations you think about is the San Antonio Spurs.
Right.
I feel like we have a really good system here, and that you have to attribute that to Coach Nurse. Just a phenomenal job that he did last year. is really underrated. And people often say, you guys had Kawhi, but someone has to make those pieces work, and that was Coach Nurse. We lost, we traded DeMar, we got Kawhi. We had to integrate him into the system and how we're going to play with him. He was coming off an injury, and we had to factor all this in. And then in the middle of the season, we had another trade for Mark. So we had a lot of moving pieces. We were still trying to develop in-house for Pascal, and Coach just did an amazing job of just putting it together. And he led us through that playoffs and through the whole season. He seemed like he always had a plan. And from day one, he would tell us, "Hey, we got to get ready for April, May, and June." He knew we were going deep. He never doubted it. And when your leader has that type of faith and belief, it's contagious. And then all of us started to believe, and the players started to believe. And if you look through that series, both Philly and Milwaukee, like, we never panicked. We were down 0-2 with Milwaukee, and Coach just did what he, does best, and he coached us through it, gave us great direction, and the rest is history.
So I do have a question for you from Josh Duke. He said, after winning the championship, do you feel the same drive to try to win again?
100%, for sure. And I think that was evident how we came out this year. As Tim said, a lot of people try to count us out. And you read that stuff, you don't take it to heart, but it does motivate you. But we once you win and you know how to win, and that's the real meaning of being a champion, because now you know what it takes, and your confidence grows. Our confidence grows inside our circle. We've become more connected. And then I think most importantly, everyone knows their job. I'm better at my job. Coach is better at his job. Kyle Lowry is better at his job. Pascal got better. Everyone gets better. And when you know what it takes, you can prepare accordingly. And, unfortunate that, games were put on hold, and we completely understand. But we felt like, and we still feel that when, the play resumes, we're going to shock a lot of people.
Mm. Yeah, talk a little bit about your role in the Raptors, because it says you're, correct me if I'm wrong, but lead assistant coach. Mm-hmm. Tell me what that means and what your kind of responsibilities are in the team.
Well, when we have a wonderful staff, and everyone contributes equally, and the number one thing that I've always believed is that you have to support the coach, the head coach. And it's one book I read some years ago. It says serve up and coach down, I believe. And it was saying how a lot of assistant coaches want to coach the head coach and tell the head coach what to do, mm-hmm. and serve the players, and right. cater to the players. But, they have it backwards. We as assistant coaches, we have to serve the head coach, make sure that we're bringing his vision to the forefront, and we're communicating the vision to the players. And then we got to coach down. You build a relationship so you can coach them, and if you have to coach them hard, the relationship is there. You don't build relationships just to be buddy, just to get on their good side. And because if you're telling them the truth, I guarantee, it's going to be some days where they don't like you. And I always felt that's when I knew I was doing my job. If a player stops talking to you, or they get the cold shoulder for a few days, then I was like, yes, I'm doing my job. If they like you too much, man, it's probably, an indication that you're not pushing them hard enough, or you're not being truthful for them. And you can't grow unless, you're open with each other, and you can be able to communicate and tell each other. It's all about correcting mistakes. It is. It's about growing, and you got to be able to tell the players the truth. And you got to create an atmosphere where the players will welcome the truth and not get too defensive.
Well, we did have a question I have to put it up there. Margot, can we ask questions? Yes, Margot, you can. Margot's a friend of mine who's watching on, so I had to put that up and give her a hard time.
Hey, Margot.
She actually said she went to MSU with Scott Skiles, so there you go. She's name dropping. So can I go back to lead assistant coach? What are your roles and responsibilities specifically?
Well, primarily this year, I've been really locked in on the defensive side.
Okay.
That's kind of been my forte. Being with Scott Skiles defense. Tom Thibodeau defense. So I'm grateful for all those years, man, doing all those game plans, the long nights, cutting edits, and little sleep, and it pays off. It's about being a coach. It's about mastery. It's about fine tuning your skills, and it's no different what we tell players. We tell players they want to be great. They got to dig deep. They got to come in for extra. They got to listen. They got to be hungry, and it's the same for coaching. I've always tried to push myself to be the best because your team is dependent on you. Part of my job is to make sure we got some defensive drills ready for the next day in practice, and then running by coach to get the okay. But you want to make the head coach's job easier, and the way you do that is knowing what the head coach wants,
Right. Their
really
philosophy.
simple, like I don't try to do anything out of the box or that would be contrary to what I know Coach Nurse wants. He has a great philosophy. So he and Coach Nate, he and I kind of put our heads together a lot of mornings before we go to Coach Nurse and get the approval. But it's been great working for Coach Nurse because he gives us a lot of autonomy to, like I said, think about what drills we want to do, and he gives us feedback. When I have to give my edits, my defensive edits to the team, and he's always supportive. And he also will let us know if we're dipping below the line, and he holds everyone accountable, and that's all you can ask. You want to put your best foot forward, and if you're slacking, he's going to let you know, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah. So more questions coming in. Margot has asked a question, and if you're listening in, be sure to ask a question. She says, was there ever a time when you were a player that you grew weary of the constant trades and moving every year? If so, I'm guessing other than the fact that it's your career and you're making money, et cetera, what made you hang in there? Because it's easy, right? I'm so sick of this. I'm done, especially later on in your career when you don't really maybe need it as much.
It was very tough. I won't deny that. I moved every 2 years, I played for 9 years. So every 2 years I was on the move. I never got a sense of home. But at the same time, you understand the business, and I was doing something that I loved. I knew the NBA was short-lived because I went undrafted and I played 3 years in the minor league. So I never took it for granted. And I was always preparing for life after basketball. What a lot of people don't know is that when I was a player, I had completed my master's as an NBA player. And a lot of people would say, man, you're in the NBA, man. Like, what you need education for? Why are you working on your master's? Well, I didn't know at the time how long I would play. If you told me that I was going to play for 9 years, I would have definitely been an amazement because each year was difficult to keep a roster spot. I mean, you fighting against, not only you fighting with the current guys, the all-stars, now you got these younger guys that are getting drafted coming in. You're competing with guys from overseas. So, I had mouths to feed. So I always wanted to prepare myself for life after basketball. And it served me well to have that attitude because I was always looking ahead. I was always preparing for what would I do? And I would always go to all the workshops that the NBA would put on for the players. It could be broadcasting, it could be real estate, it was coaching, and I did a coaching clinic my last couple years in the league. So I do think I was a little ahead of the curve of most guys. You
Sure.
know, think that they're going to play forever, but I think the average playing years is about 4 years in the
Uh,
NBA. So it's not easy. It's not easy at
but
all.
but you're still preparing. You're working on your doctorate, and a lot of people may not know that. And you're getting there. You're getting close now. Why do a doctorate of all things? Yeah, again, it's not necessary, right? You're working in the NBA. You've got a good career. What is pushing you to achieve this?
I think number one is I just love to learn. I just
Mm,
want to be well rounded. I'm a competitor. I want to be the best in my field. I want to just push myself. It kind of gives me that same drive that I had when I was a player, just pushing yourself to the limit. When there was times when I was a player, I didn't know if I can get up in the next morning and work out because my body was just aching. Back then we played, back to back, day off, back to back. You play 4 or 5 games in a week, and um, doing this doctorate during the season is very similar to that. A lot of long nights. A lot of nights my wife is pushing me because I want to quit, and she, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be having this conversation because
oh, I understand.
it's been very difficult, man. And but I've always believed that you pay the price now to enjoy life later. And I said I'm gonna give myself 5 years. It's going to be 5 years to sacrifice long hours. And like a lot of people, and I don't, publicize it, but I have a scout to get ready for. I'm watching all these games, and then I'll have a paper to do, and I'm up at 3, 4 in the morning. Somehow I'll get it done. A lot of grace and a lot of coffee and caffeine, but it's worth it at the end. I truly believe it'll be worth it.
Well, I'm looking forward to calling you, Dr. Coach Griffin or something. It's going to be fun.
Well, I'll
We'll
be
get
on
that
your
on the
level
shirt.
then.
It'll be Dr. Griffin on the back of your shirt.
Yeah.
If I was to ask you what your coaching style is, what would you tell me?
I think I want to be a good teacher, number one. And what I mean by that, I want to be able to give constructive feedback. I don't want to be just a coach that says, we got to play defense. What
Right,
does that mean?
right.
You got to play harder, and sometimes
Wow.
that's true. You do have to play harder. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I want to be able to teach them exactly, all right, here's the specific teaching points that we need to get across to our players in order for them to get better. And then after that, I'm a big believer in positive reinforcement. I'm not a yeller or screamer, but obviously I played in the NBA for 9 years. In my mind, I'm as tough as to get. Because I had to guard the toughest guys, and that was my assignment. The Michael Jordans, Kobe Bryant's, Vince Carter, you name it, I had to guard them every night. So you got to have some level of mental toughness. But when it comes to coaching, it has more to do with emotional intelligence, anything, and you really don't want to lose your cool all the time, unless when you're in the big seat and the head coach, you got a few more bullets. But assistant coaches got to learn. You got to learn to communicate. You don't have as many bullets, and you don't want to waste it. You don't want to ruin those relationships because you wasn't able to contain yourself. Because a lot of the issues that occur between a coach and a player a lot of that stems from just a lack of communication skills. That's all. You get frustrated because you don't know how to reach a player. And that's not a bad thing because all coaches have good intentions. You care so much and you want to get to this player, and when you don't have those skills and the resources to do so, that's when the frustration sets in, and you may say something that you regret later. So I've always tried to be cognizant of that, make sure that I'm working on myself. And I treat it like almost every season as a case study and try to remember what I learned. Remember what Coach Nurse, how he dealt with a lot of situations. So when I get in that situation, I'm a little more equipped. And then I think last thing, number 3 for me would be assert yourself when the players go. I always say, and I learned this from Thibodeau. He would always say, "Stay above the line." Just stay above the line. But when players, and it happens sometimes when they dip below the line, and that's when I feel like you really have to be honest and upfront and tell them that, hey, you're dropping the ball, man. And I got to tell you the truth as I see it. And that's when if you need to assert yourself, that's the that's the green light. Whenever I remember Coach Wooden would say something on the lines is that when you know that they've been taught, then you can hold them accountable. But if you haven't taught them, you don't have a right as a coach to get after them and criticize them. First you got to make sure that you've done a thorough job of teaching them, and they've shown that they can go out and execute it. And then when they're not doing their job, then you're able to really get on them and get their attention and kind of work in those 3 premises, and that's kind of helped me shape my coaching philosophy.
Okay, great. Well, we have lighter questions for you. Same person. Who was your favorite teammate?
Favorite teammate? I was fortunate to play with some really, really good guys.
It's a favorite, not necessarily who was the best player.
My favorite was Dirk Nowitzki because he was just an awesome teammate. He was a superstar, and but I played with him and Steve Nash, and those guys were awesome. They always never acted like they were above us. And man, they can play. We're never out of a game when you have Dirk Nowitzki, man. It's the greatest feeling because you can be down 20, and as long as there's time on the clock, man, you got a chance to get back in the game. And it was just phenomenal talent. When as a player when you're on a team with greatness, you can't deny it. And I knew when I played with Dirk Nowitzki, I played with him in 2 stints with Dallas. I knew, like, looking back 30 years from now, like, he's going to be a Hall of Famer, and I'm going to be telling my grandkids, like, I played with this guy, Dirk Nowitzki. And it was an honor, and I think he's just a better person, and that says a lot about him because he's a hell of a basketball player, but even better person.
And then who's been your favorite coach to coach beside? Probably can't say that, can you? You've had a lot of good coaches. You've talked about this before.
I saw the question that said outside of the Raptors and Coach Nurse, but I think you learn from every coach, man. I'm telling you, every coach is your favorite. I've learned so much, and that you can't, pencil one person. What I've learned the last 2 years under Coach Nurse it's been remarkable, but I needed to be under Scott Skiles. I needed to be under Tom Thibodeau. I needed to be under Billy Donovan with OKC. I could tell you every stop along the way, like, it was pivotal for my career. So when you've coached a while, you think this is really a cop-out answer, but if you ever coach, man, like, every stop, every coach is tremendous for your development.
Well, let me ask you then, that we talked about your favorite teammate. Who was the player that you least looked forward to playing against? Because you mentioned some big names about players that you played. Was there anyone that stood out in your mind as just somebody you just struggled to play against?
Well, you always get up for those games. I thought it was an honor to play against Kobe. I remember just the night before, just getting mentally ready, because I knew, like, if you're not on, man, that he's going to drop 60 on you and he's going to embarrass you. So those games were always fun. The tough guys were like the Ron Artest, Matt Harpering. I mean, just the strong physical, because I always thought that I was strong and physical until you play against guys who are really strong and physical. And they would just beat you up, man. I remember Matt Harpering, like, he just physical, man. specimen, run our tests, and man, you trying to, they beat you up when they're on offense. They're banging into you and throwing their body into you, and you just feel it all over, from your head to your feet. And I just remember just the battles, when we play Utah and trying to guard Harper, and they'll run that UCLA flex action, and he'll start slicing to the basket and just try to run you over, man. And then trying to box those guys out was almost impossible. So those are the guys that really kind of gave me some issues.
Mm-hmm. Going back into your coaching is a stressful job. I think most coaches would tell you that. And basketball is one of those interesting sports, especially at the NBA level, where you guys spend so much time on the road during the season, and the season's a long one. And so how do you balance the fact that you're away from home for so long, and also, raising a family as a dad and being a husband? Have you found any kind of advice for people who are going into this, coaching career? And, it's definitely something they have to factor in.
Well, that's a good question. It's something that I'm constantly fine tuning and how to really take on the season. And be honest with you, if I had to learn the hard way, there's been years where, because we eat at 11, 12 o'clock at night, they feed us, all during the day, and you just pack on 20 pounds easy, and then you stand up to 2 or 3 in the morning drinking coffee after coffee and just, pouring that caffeine down your throat just to stay up. And it's just, it's not conducive to a healthy lifestyle, the travel, the eating habits, and then, trying to maintain a routine, as far as exercise routine. It gets difficult as well. But, one thing, and my wife is on me, about this all the time. And she'll say, why don't you do work when you're at work? I always bring my work home, and I'm up late. And she's right. Like, I have to kind of prioritize my time a little bit better. And it really comes down to like time management, and, I'm always trying to squeeze in that extra hour just doing nothing, because I know like my day just filled with just ripping and running. But, when I go to work, I might have to find times where I'm working on my scout. So even if it's an hour, when I get home, I'm not staying up to wee hours, to the morning. And it's just little stuff like that, just it really comes down to discipline and routines and sticking to it. It's a challenge because it only takes a little bit to knock you off your rocker. Back-to-back games are really difficult for me when I'm doing the defensive scouts, because I watch 5-6 games of each opponent, and then the last a few games that you played against that opponent. So within 48-hour span, I'm watching 15 games. It's a lot. And I'm up late, and then it seems to carry on to the next day. Now I'm dragging and I'm tired. So it's something that you get a feel for, and you get a little bit better at it as the years. I'm better now than I was, when I was younger, even though I had more energy back then. But now I'm able to plan ahead, especially, taking classes during the season. I really have to be great with time management.
What do you do during your time off? What does Adrian do to have fun?
I'm laughing because my wife in the background, she just started laughing. You have no time. And she's always reminded me, like, I'm on my second marriage, and we just got married less than 5 years ago. And she constantly reminds me that I've been working on my doctorate degree ever since we got married, and I have no time for her a lot of times, but she's been a trooper, man. She understands. And I think, you mentioned about the families. I think, one, being present with them, but two, man, there's no way around it. You know, your spouse and your children's got to know, like, it's going to be a lot of long hours, and they've been so, you know, my wife been so supportive with me, and because I don't have any time, you know, if I'm not doing schoolwork, you know, I'm working on edits and scouts, so it's one of those, you know, cycles. It never stops. But
so no fun for Adrian.
it's not during the season. It's very tough.
There you have it. During season, you're not going to have a life, everyone. If you're a coach, and you're not going to have any spare time. It's not going to be fun. Well, maybe this is a reminder that you should find a few minutes in the day to chill and do something away from work. If speaking of going into coaching, if you're somebody who's interested in going into the profession, and you know, I've been interviewing a few people this week, and consistently you have to be very dedicated to do it. There's no question about it. It's a lot of work. You have to be well prepared. In fact, one guest coach basically said, if you don't love it, don't do it, because it's too much. It will burn you out. What advice would you have for somebody who says, comes into FSU coach, says, Dr. Baghurst, I want to be a coach. You know, what would you, if you're in my position, tell them about what would help them prepare for that?
I think two things. I think one, get a mentor. You know, a mentor can cut your learning curve tremendously. You just have to be receptive and open to feedback, and coaching is almost like apprenticeship, man. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a lot of years developing your skills. And so when one, get under someone that you trust and someone that is a great teacher and they're teaching the fundamentals of the game, I think, and then two is to educate yourself. And you mentioned, you know, what FSU coach program. If I had to do it all over again, I would have went that route. I would have tried to educate, got me some formal education, because if you skip the steps, you just got to repeat it. You know, I shot up the ladder fast, you know, but I found, you know, the quicker up the ladder I went, the more I didn't know, and I had to retrace some of my steps and go back and kind of teach myself a lot of things that I had skipped. You know, no other way to describe it. You know, I didn't know how to motivate players. You know, I mean, I had a good sense of, like, a good feel for certain things, but it's always kind of hit and miss. You know, just from my playing years, I was able to make some things happen. But, you know, you want to learn, like, behaviorism. You know, you want to know how people learn. You know, you want to know about positive reinforcement. You know, and you want to be able to communicate and put drills together. You know, and understand, like, some players learn visually. You know, some players they can hear it, and then some players you have to walk through on the court. And, you know, I didn't know a lot of this, and I'm telling you, it's taken me, you know, over a decade to really develop those skills. But if you can get those early, and I'm telling you, trust me when I say, if you can get that formal education early, and what coaching is all about, man, you'll hit the ground running, and you'll surpass a lot of your peers, because it really teaches you the intricate details about coaching that are often missed, you know, when you don't have that formal education.
Well, we got a lot of questions about kind of the transition from player into coach, and I'll say this, in that Adrian's already talked a little bit about that already. So if you came in late, watch the video later, and you'll catch some of those answers. Adrian, you know, you're one of a select group of people, right? The NBA is a small organization. I mean, yes, it's large from a viewership point of view, but it's a small group of coaches, and to be part of that is something quite prestigious. How do you how do you work with other teams and other coaches and see them on a regular basis and have that kind of almost off-court friendship, yet at the same time your teams are competing against each other all the time?
Well, I used to say that the NBA is a brotherhood, but it's bigger than that now. It's a brotherhood and a sisterhood. You know, like the game is expanding.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's been awesome to see how, you know, we're integrating, you know, everyone, and that's the way it should be. You know, women. We have coaches from Europe, overseas. The game is becoming global, and obviously, from a player standpoint, you know, it's so diverse, and so it is one big family. And it's a mutual respect because, especially with coaching, like, you know how hard that other coach is working, and you know that they're staying up in the middle of the night. They're grinding. You know, they're working with players and putting out fires, and they're traveling, and they're, you know, getting on planes and off planes at 1 or 2 in the morning and driving home, and then have to get up and do it all over again. So there's a mutual respect, and you know, but at the same time, we're all competitors, and you want to kick their butt, and they're trying to kick our butt. And I think that's where your hunger has to come through, where you want to learn as much as you can. You know, I can't stress enough to, you know, find ways to get better. There's no excuses. You know, you can get online, you can get on the books. You know, go to a bookstore. There's thousands of books, sports psychology, on coaching, building relationships, leadership. I mean, the list goes on. You just want to add this stuff to your toolbox. That's what it's all about. You know, every time you develop a skill, you could just put it in your toolbox because you'll need it. You know, you need those tools. You need those tools to communicate and to get where you want to be.
Well, if you have questions, anybody watching or anybody watching in future on YouTube, how is there any way they can get in touch with you and ask any more specific questions?
Well, I'm on Twitter quite a bit, so it's at NBA Coach Griffin, and I usually check my emails, and you know, and that's kind of how I keep up with my kids too. I don't think
I might have seen some of that.
to their phone, and they don't return my text, so I have to get on the internet to see what they're up to. So I think it's like most players, you know.
Okay, so contact, because you're funny. Oh man, I gotta keep up with my kids by checking Twitter. That's funny. Well, if anybody has questions for Coach Griffin, you can contact him that way. Coach, thanks so much for joining me, and really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and experience. And of course, I wish you all the best as you hopefully get back into either this season or next season. For
sure. Thank you so much, man. And also, you know, just on a serious note, let's, you know, all do our part with this. You know, this coronavirus is touching everyone, and it's serious. And, you know, let's just it's like being a part of a team. You know, everyone has a role to play, and it doesn't work when everyone doesn't accept their role and just bring what they bring to the table. And right now, you know, that consists of us just staying low, you know, staying in the house, you know, and make the best out of it. But, you know, I'm praying everyone stay safe. And Tim, thank you so much, man, for having me on. Really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you.